The truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day it's flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the 1-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
On the last installment of the Dark Waters channel, the Lockett Ranch was under attack by Dogmen. Several people are now missing, and after finding no solution, the family was forced to abandon the property. We now present part 2 of Dogman, Siege of Lockett Ranch.
It had been 2 months since my family abandoned our ancestral property. So when my father and grandfather said they were going back to retrieve some personal items, including the deed to the property, I was both excited and worried. Ed Sr., my grandfather, called his trusted friend, Barnabas, and the 4 of us took the hour-long drive to the property. The sight of the house brought back memories of the night I spent in the attic with my grandmother while my dad and others fought off the creatures we now were calling wolfmen. The sound of Charlie, my favorite dog, being killed while defending me, and the sounds of the creatures on the roof of the house all came flooding back to me in my mind like someone had opened a faucet of memories. I was snapped back to reality when Barnabas opened the door to the truck and stepped out with his shotgun. He looked at me and said, "Boy, to the roof. If you see something, fire a single shot and don't shoot at him." Dad backed the truck up right up to the front porch, and I climbed from the top of the truck to the roof of the house. On the roof, I was able to see the entire property. It had fallen into such disarray. Long gone was the well-cut grass. In its place was high weeds. Vines had begun to run along the side of the house, and the place I remember was starting to fade. It felt gloomy, as if there was a dark energy surrounding the property. I sat there staring out at the shell of the home that I used to live in. These creatures had taken everything from my family. There in that moment, I was angry, not afraid. I knew what my father and grandfather were feeling as they searched the house for the deed of the property. While deep in thought, I began to catch that familiar scent of wet hair, blood, and urine. The scent of one of those creatures was blowing in from the north side of the property. Over near the barn was one of them, with his nose pointing straight in the air, sniffing. I was downwind of him, so it wasn't me he was smelling. This one was smaller than the others I had seen. It was standing on its hind legs and looking around. It was jet black, and its fur stood out against the red paint on the barn. It stood there for a few seconds, then took a quick leap, clearing about 30 feet, landing and then sprinting off into the wood line. I was sure it hadn't seen me. However, I had to alert the others to its presence. So instead of firing a shot, I jumped down into the bed of the truck and entered the house. Why did I do that? Our home, which was beautiful, had been ransacked. Broken furniture with claw marks spewed all through it. The walls all had claw marks, where these monsters had ripped through the plaster, and the back door was completely broken in half. There, I found my father, sitting on a wooden stool among all the destruction. He was in tears. "I saw one, Dad." He looked up at me while wiping his face and said loudly, "It's time to go." My grandfather emerged from his bedroom with a stack of papers and some pictures in his hand. Barnabas followed closely behind him with a shotgun. We quickly exited and got into the truck, pulling away. As we drove away, Barnabas pointed to the ridge line. Standing there on a ridge amongst the trees was the gray one, his massive head and muscular body covered in gray hair, leaving no doubt it was him. That day is forever etched in my mind. He became more than just a creature to me. He became the nemesis of our family, an enemy that lurked in the shadows. That day, my grandfather decided he was going to kill the gray one. The next month, Grandpa sold 100 acres of the family property that was west of the house to a wealthy shipping family who wanted land with easy access to the river. He hired a blacksmith to make 2 different types of traps. One was similar to a bear trap, but it was 4 times bigger, with 12-inch spikes that interlocked and curled when shut. The second was a smaller trap that used the same spikes. Grandpa and Barnabas hired another crew of hunters to guard the property, while contractors worked to reinforce our home. Added a 6-inch thick tin roof, special-made reinforced wooden doors, and the fireplace was brick shut. Grandpa had made our home into a fortress. The next 13 months was an all-out war to reclaim our property from these wolfmen. Barnabas, my grandfather's best friend, was assigned to do some research on these creatures. He was able to contact a member of the Chickasaw tribe, who took him to the oldest living member of the Chickasaw Nation. What he learned was both shocking and frightening. Indeed, our property was in the heart of their nation, and the Chickasaw knew very well about the wolfmen our family had encountered. They called them Nashoba, Iskobo, Hatata Nakanini, or Wolfhead Man. The wolfmen had roamed the lands for hundreds of years, along with what they called Lofa. Today we call them Bigfoot. The Chickasaw and Choctaw tribes had come to fear and respect them both. The wolfmen were fierce hunter-killers, and they lived on the deer of the land. He told Barnabas the story of a hunting party of 10 men that ventured out to gather food. These men were expert hunters and trackers. They were the first to come across these wolfmen. The group tracked a large buck they had wounded into an area that they had previously not ever ventured into. The land today is known as Lake Sardis. Then there was no lake. The land was nothing more than slough and wetland. They came to a dense forest and found the buck there, torn to pieces, its head resting on a tree branch 15 feet in the air. Then, from the trees, the wolfmen attacked their party, slashing and biting. Only one man was able to escape. That night in the village, children reported seeing large black wolves whose eyes shined red from the light of the fire. And that very next day, the Chickasaw and Choctaw sat down and had a meeting. They decided to send out 2 groups of warriors into the area to kill the beast. What they encountered was a pack of 5 wolfmen, and they were forced to retreat. Confused and afraid, the elders of the Chickasaw and Choctaw decided to send out 2 of their most furious warriors into the land of the Lofa, what we call Bigfoot. The job was to steal bones from the burial ground of the Lofa and take them to the land of the wolfmen, in hopes that the Lofa would come to retrieve them. The men journeyed northwest into the land of the Lofa, and after 4 days they arrived at their destination. The 2 warriors entered a clearing at sunset, where they found large mounds surrounded by stones, and in the middle was a structure made of large tree branches. They were able to steal a skull of one of the Lofa, but on a journey back, the Choctaw and Chickasaw were separated from each other. And when the Chickasaw finally found the Choctaw, his body was torn into pieces. His arms and legs had been ripped off and spread about. When he returned to his village, another group of warriors was tasked with taking the skull and burying it deep inside the land of the wolfmen. After 3 attempts, they were successful, and this began a war between the Lofa, or giants, and the wolfmen that raged for years. The Chickasaw and Choctaw were successful in that they had found an adversary for the wolfmen. However, they failed that and now the game was being hunted by both wolfmen and Lo-Fi, leaving the area's food supply in shatters. The Chickasaw were forced to migrate further south and abandon the heart of their territory in search of food. Barnabas learned that the land my family acquired was the very same land that the Chickasaw abandoned. This information came as a shock to my grandfather, who never knew these creatures even existed. On top of this, Grandpa will soon have other issues to deal with, mainly explaining how 7 men had gone missing on his property. One evening while at the property, Grandpa was paid a visit by the sheriff, who insisted that he explain what was going on. Calmly, Grandpa explained that the men had been attacked by wild animals and had simply gone missing. That day, Ed Sr., my grandpa, was taken into custody by the sheriff. While Grandpa was being held, the sheriff organized a search party to venture onto the property in search of the 7 missing men. Initially, the search party was going out into the woods unarmed, a sign that they believed that our family was guilty of foul play. But Mr. David, the foreman, who was very well connected, insisted that the men bring dogs and weapons to use during the search. The events of that day would leave no doubt that my family was innocent of any wrongdoing. As the police garnered men for the search party, witnesses were being interviewed about the events that happened over the past few weeks. The 10 men who worked security in the barn all told their stories of the beast that attacked the barn that night. Mr. David, Barnabas, and my grandfather all shared their experiences, which initially fell on deaf ears. However, in a matter of 24 hours, my family's good name would be cleared. The sheriff finally had organized the men that he wanted for the search party: 20 civilians, 10 sheriff's deputies, and 5 men from wildlife and fisheries were about to experience firsthand the terror of these creatures. Mr. David and Barnabas volunteered to join the group. They knew how risky it was to venture into these woods. The search party departed at daybreak, equipped with the torn shirt of the first missing logger and 7 dogs to track the scent. The men spread out, forming a line, 15 yards apart from each other, and entered into the woods. The first 7 miles of the journey, they experienced nothing. However, when they reached the area of old moss-covered oak trees, the woods took on a more sinister feel. The scent dogs that were leading them began to slow their pace and behave abnormally. One dog simply lay flat on the ground and refused to move at all. As they moved deeper and deeper into the woods, all 7 dogs stopped and began to pull in the other direction, trying to leave the area. Barnabas recalled seeing dark figures moving quickly in front and behind them. However, the sheriff insisted that the men press forward and continue the search. The terrain began to change into slough and muddy wetland when the men spotted their first set of fresh prints. They were bipedal, canine footprints the size of a grapefruit. The prints went on for a few yards, then disappeared. Then, all at once, the dogs began to bark, looking upwards into the trees and trying to pull away. 2 of the dogs actually broke their leash and ran in the other direction. There was rustling sounds from the trees above their heads, and they began to hear growling noises from all different directions. Some of the men began to panic and broke the line, backing away to flee out of the area. Mr. David told my father and I that the creatures moved with such ease that it was frightening. He spotted them darting from tree to tree, some on the ground, while others in the air. Simultaneously, several others were racing along the ridge line to get behind them and cut them off. Shooting began to break out from all different directions, and one of the men from the Wildlife and Fisheries Department was shot in the arm. After a short time of mass confusion, somehow the sheriff deputies were able to round all the men together and get them to form a circle and retreat out of there. When they arrived back at the house, the sheriff was at a loss for words. And when Barnabas asked him if he believed Ed Sr. now, he simply radioed the station and had him released. The sheriff, now concerned, offered to leave armed guards at the property to help my family, but Ed Sr. declined. There was already enough dead people on his conscience, and he did not want any more. Ed Sr., Ed Jr., Barnabas, and Mr. David hunkered down and prepared for the creatures to retaliate. The men had trespassed on their land, and the wolfmen were sure to come back that night. Meanwhile, Grandma and I were dealing with our own problems. The people in the town began to gossip and call our family murderers. Kids began to call me the devil's grandson. This led to me having lots of fights. With no brothers and sisters, I had to fend for myself. Sometimes in my mind, I would try to move and attack the way the gray one would, jumping towards the kids fighting me, kicking and punching and biting them, anything to defend myself. It took a few of these fights before people decided to leave me alone. Grandma was being ostracized by the people of the community. Everywhere she went, people were whispering and snickering. This was starting to take a toll on my grandmother. She began to isolate herself and started having problems sleeping at night. Terrorized in her sleep by the memories of these creatures, and harassed by day from the people of the community, combined with her now being worried about her husband and son who were on the property trying to fight off these creatures, Grandma began to break down. Mr. David's wife was truly a lifesaver for my grandmother, giving her a sympathetic ear, as both their husbands were in danger. They were now bonded by the trouble that these creatures had created. While I was fighting for our family name, Grandma was fighting for her sanity. And back at the property, Grandpa and my dad were fighting to protect our legacy. It was nightfall. They began to hear a rumbling sound as if an army was running through the woods. Standing with the back door open, it grew louder and louder, until they saw the gray one towering above the cornfield. They began to fire at him. He alone was the target. He was the one they were going to kill. The gray one stepped back out of sight and let out a howl unlike anything ever heard. They slammed the door and locked it behind them, heading towards the windows, following behind the movement of the dogs. At the rear of the house, you could hear the sound of the small metal traps closing in the cornfield, and the creatures yelping in pain as the spikes hit their flesh. The sound of them sliding off the metal roof that had been greased with thick motor oil let Grandpa know his plan was working. And they unleashed round after round after round on these creatures. It was the wolfmen now who were the ones being hunted. Finally, one of the large traps was set off on the west side of the house, and the animal cried out in pain. They all rushed to the window to see it standing there, with the large metal spike lodged in the fleshy meat above its knee. There was a pause in all the activity as the creature struggled to open the trap with its claws. It began to make this yipping sound, as if it was calling for help. Then two other creatures approached. The look on this creature's face was one of panic and terror. They yipped back and forth, all looking concerned and confused. Then the other two creatures began to pull the trap apart, tearing the flesh from the creature's bones as they ripped the curled spikes out of his leg. The gray one stepped out of the darkness and let out an enormous howl, and the rest of the creatures retreated into the darkness. Grandpa took aim at the gray one, firing a single shot that hit him in the shoulder, wounding him. Everyone was in a celebratory mood that night except for Grandpa. He was now more worried than ever. The gray one now had been wounded and would be far more dangerous. That morning, they walked the property and discovered that 9 of the small traps were missing and found trails of blood everywhere. These creatures were indeed not invincible, and that night had proved it. Checking the roof, they were able to see where one of the creatures had slid off and fallen next to the trap, surmising that it was the same one who got caught in it. They could have tracked these creatures that day. but Grandpa decided it was best to stay near the house where they had the advantage. The following 2 nights were completely uneventful, and the farm seemed to take on a sense of peace and serenity that my father described as a rebirth of the good old days at Locket Ranch. Even the air seemed fresher and cleaner. But again, Grandpa knew better and was taking time to set more traps and be prepared for what he knew was going to be a vicious attack. He took mud and dirt and packed it at the back porch steps, setting one of the larger traps there, surrounded by smaller traps. There was not a space anywhere around the house that had not been trapped. Above the back door, he suspended a trap in the air, connecting a chain to it and a strike plate right at the doorstep. That way, if any creature tried to come in the back door, the trap would lock around his head. Grandpa was nervous. He knew that now that these creatures had been wounded, they were going to try and breach the house and kill them all. Okay guys, so wow, what a story. That is part 2 of Dogman Siege of Locket Ranch. Story based in 1948 that happened around the area of Taylor, Mississippi. I hope you guys are really enjoying this. It takes a lot of effort to get it where it's going and make it sound right. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Now we're moving towards the Q&A portion of these videos, which I love to do, which I call Inside Baseball. And so just in case you guys hear anybody else out there running with Inside Baseball, shoot a message, say, hey, my boy Dark Water started that first, not you. But a couple of special thank yous are in order. And as you guys know, I don't edit the Inside Baseball at all. Michelle Nestor. Michelle, I want to thank you because Michelle is now doing an intro transition to all the videos. Like I said before, guys, I want to be the channel where you guys are interactive. And there are a lot of things coming down the pipeline that are going to allow you guys to be very interactive with this channel. And again, I want to change the way horror is created and the way horror channels operate on YouTube. In a sense, I have a disruptive model for how I'm going to do things, and you guys are going to see it coming up real soon. So Michelle, thank you. And to the rest of you guys who sent me emails who want to read, trust me, I am working on it. I just have to facilitate a way for you to do it because it just takes a while. With that being said, guys, another thing just about the whole disruptive creating your own lane on YouTube thing that I want to do is I'm getting ready to start promoting the channel. I'm going to spend a few dollars promoting the Dark Waters channel on YouTube. And this is something very interesting, and I'm going to need you guys' help. Right now we have about 2,600 subscribers. Again, you guys are awesome. I swear to God, you're the best subscribers on YouTube and very active, and I love you guys and I appreciate it. So we're going to take it a step further. Each of you guys have a cell phone, right? In each of your cell phones, you can do a quick audio recording. That recording ends up being an MP3. So what I would like at least 50 to 60 of you guys to do is hit record on your cell phone and speak into your phone and just talk about the Dark Waters channel. Say what you like. You know, if you like the channel, if you love the sound of the channel, say it. If you like me as a narrator, say it. I need about 50 of you guys to talk about how you like this channel and what made you subscribe. Just if you want to give kudos, great. However you want to express the way you feel about this channel, I want about 50 of you guys to do that. And then email it to me. It's very simple. Once that recording is done on your phone, all you have to do is attach it to an email, and you can send it to the email that's below in the description. And also I'm going to put that email up on the screen for you guys. Those emails are going to be taken, those voice files are going to be taken and composed into my new channel ad, as opposed to me talking about how good my channel is, because I believe my channel is the best, and it's just a matter of time before I rival some of the other people in the horror genre here. I would rather you guys tell people, what you think about the channel and how good the channel is. Yeah, I'd rather you guys just tell people about the channel, how good you think it is, and what makes it stand out versus other people's channels. So I'm looking for 50 to 75 of you guys. Give me anywhere between 10 seconds to 20 seconds. No more than 30 seconds of you saying why you like the channel. I'll take that information, slice it, cut it, add music, do my thing to it, and when it's done, it will be probably the best channel ad on YouTube. What else I want to talk to you guys about? I didn't questions for the Q&A. I didn't see many of them this time, so what I'm going to do is a lot more compliments than questions, and I'm appreciative of it. But guys, as far as the Q&A sessions are concerned, the reason why we do it is because, hey, I want to answer your questions. So what I will do is I'll pivot and just talk about some of the things that are going on, again, that I consider inside baseball, some of the things that you guys don't know, particularly surrounding this story in Taylor, Mississippi. So some of the things I can tell you is that, or at least one of the things I can tell you is that the people in Taylor, Mississippi are still having issues with these creatures. So, I want you guys to be careful. I know a couple of you guys, I've read comments where you said you wanted to go out to Taylor and look and see for yourself. Oh man, that's a motorbike riding down the street. Can he make any more noise? I know a couple of you guys have said you want to go there. And my concern for the citizens of Taylor who live with these creatures on a daily basis, along with Bigfoot as well, is that dogmen are not currently entering into the city of Taylor. They found little various ways and mechanisms to keep them out. Some of those things I'll disclose in the final Q&A, and some things that I think are very important for other people who are dealing with these creatures to find out. But my concern is that if we have a group of people who go out there and start milling around in the woods and force these creatures into the city, then we really may have some issues where someone could get hurt. And I think that you have to realize that these people have to coexist with these creatures. For us, or for many of us, this is entertainment. For them, it's their livelihood, and they have to take the trash out at night. They have to let their kids out the house to play. So for us, it's entertainment. For them, it's a real threat to a lot of these people. Now, with that being said, I don't see anything wrong with someone who's a well-armed, well-trained type of individual who knows exactly what's going on to head out into those woods, as long as they just get the authority and approval of the local police department, and or hunt these creatures on their own property. So if you have your own property out there and you decide to hunt these creatures, then hey, it's your property. You do what you want to do. So there are ways to handle that, but just for the curious individual to run out to Taylor and mess around in these woods is a bad idea. It's a horrible, horrible idea, because I can't really guarantee that you're going to make it out of that situation. And based on my experience, there is no guarantee that you will make it out of that situation. All right, so story, the inside baseball, a little bit more on the story itself. Barnabas is one of the characters in the story that I haven't really talked much about. And when I spoke to Ed yesterday, I asked him to tell me a little bit more about Barnabas, because in this story I didn't really do a lot of character development. I just kind of dropped these guys in there with Ed's grandfather, and let them kind of do their thing, which is essentially what happened. But I didn't really give you guys a lot of background on Barnabas. So the story is that Barnabas was an alcoholic, but he was a person who was an avid hunter and slightly kind of crazy. Barnabas was Ed Sr.'s best friend, and he was a bit of a drunk, but also he was a loyal friend to Ed Sr. Now, back in those days, there was a lot going on in Mississippi. As you guys know, you can imagine it's 1948, and there's a lot going on. The world is a whole different place. And so Barnabas had actually got caught inside of not caught, but Barnabas had got accused of murder. And anyway, he ended up beating his murder case. And the reason why he beat that case is because Ed Sr. was there to testify on his behalf in court, and pretty much had the evidence or information that freed him. So that's how those two guys became very close friends. I didn't get any more detail on what the circumstances was around his murder trial and his murder case, but he ended up beating the case, and that was thanks to Ed Sr. Because you have to ask yourself, why would a man stick by his friend like this under these circumstances? And that was a question that I asked Ed. I said, well, what the hell is up with Barnabas? Why is he hanging out with Ed Sr.? I can see Ed Jr., the son, being there. I can see Mr. David being there because he's a logger and he stands to make a huge sums of money, so there's something in it for him. And I was like, what's in it for Barnabas? And what was in it for Barnabas was he was repaying whatever debt he felt to the Locket family. So I just think that's an interesting detail that I don't touch on in the story that you guys would be very much so interested in. I hope I'm not giving much away on that, because you might be able to go back and find some other stuff on it, but whatever. It's not a violation because I'm still not giving too much information. Alright, let's talk about what's coming up next on the channel, what we got coming down the pipeline. We have a couple of stories that I'm pivoting towards. One in particular is is going to be entitled The House of Kern, which is a story given to me by one of them in particular. Is called The House of Kern. It's the name I gave it because I had to disguise the name of the actual real house. But these accounts for the story The House of Kern, Vampires in the French Quarters, these stories that are coming out next are based on information that I've gotten from interviewing the NOPD officer who works the paranormal cases here in New Orleans. I've had enough time to vet him through other officers that I know. I talked to two very seasoned homicide detectives here that I smoke cigars with, and then I ended up talking to a guy who's on Vice that I'm very close friends with, and as I asked some questions about this guy and his partner, and their exact words were, bro, they deal with the shit that we don't want to be bothered with. They deal with all the freaky, crazy shit that nobody else wants to deal with. So there was a lot of truth in what this gentleman's saying. And again, it's taking me a little time with this particular story because I'm having to omit details and replace things that I don't want him to get in trouble by disclosing some of this information, because some of the information is about cases that are recently closed, and some of them, one or two of the stories, about cases that are still open, and you would consider them cold cases, I guess is how you consider it. So I think you guys are going to enjoy that story. It's called The House of Kern, Vampires of the French Quarters. I think that's what I named it anyway. And just to give you a little bit about it kind of starts off with this, where this young lady comes into a police station and says that she was abducted by a vampire, and nobody believes it. They're like, oh, she's drunk, she's high, she's on drugs, she's tripping, but these guys, the two officers who deal with this stuff all the time, they end up going and sitting down with her and talking with her, and she takes them back to the location where she was when she was abducted. And by abduction, it doesn't mean like he took her and kidnapped her, but I think abducted is a strong word to describe what happened, but maybe accosted. No, that's not the word. Persuaded to leave the location she was in. It's probably better to describe what happened to her. And anyway, so she takes him back to this ballroom, which I'm going down there to get pictures of the ballroom for you guys. And so they take her for a ride. She takes them back to the ballroom where the incident happened, and she describes this very, very handsome black man who kind of mesmerized her from one side of the room to the other. And next thing she knows, she's leaving the ballroom with him, and ends up down the street, going through a private entryway into a courtyard that leads to a house. And she described being mesmerized by this person as he held her hand and feeling a sense of her energy being drained. And I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to give too much more of the story. But he's discussed the concept of vampires here in the city of New Orleans, and a family of them, of vampires, and how that it's not what you think on TV, where it's like, oh, I want to suck your blood. But there's a psychic version of them who live off people's life force energy, and then there's a group of them that live off people's blood. And it's not that they're running around taking homeless people off the street and flying through the air. And he really goes in detail about these what I call them creatures or beings. So that's going to be another story that I think you guys are going to find fantastic coming down the pipeline. Prior to that or after that, I'm not sure, but I really need you. I don't know. But from there, we're going to touch on another cryptid, which is the blue dogs of Texas. I have some great blue dog stories that I've been able to vet from a guy who I'm ended up becoming real close with, who's a how do I describe what he is? He's a military contractor out in Texas, and he's sharing a lot of experiences with blue dogs and how they chase prey, and how people on the border of Texas have been having encounters with these creatures. Border patrol agents have encounters with them, and the military contractors on the border have had encounters with them where they've been attacked and had to fight them off. So those are some very good, exciting stories that I'm going to share with you guys. And I'll probably lump them in and do another hour-long 10-story deal for you guys coming up next. So what I would like is, don't forget to subscribe and share. If you want to share my videos on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, you don't have to have permission. Take the link and share the link because it helps us grow. But also, what I would like to see happen is you guys ask more questions. You can shoot your questions to the email address melchizedekgroupllc@gmail.com, which is posted all through the comment section, and it's posted under the About section of the YouTube channel, and it's also posted, typically it's posted on the back of these videos. So shoot your questions to me there, or even just ask your questions in the comment section, because Q&A is something that I really, really enjoy doing. And in fact, let's even take Q&A to a whole nother level. Let's do this. The same concept where you actually send your email, where I'm asking you guys to do a 30-second recording talking about the channel. If you would like, do a 30-second question or a minute-long question or a comment via recording on your phone, right? And email it to me. And then I'll drop it in and I'll answer your question where people can actually hear your voice and hear you actually ask the question, as opposed to the question in writing. I really like that. Let's do that. Let's take the next set of questions. Grab your cell phone, go to the voice recorder, hit record, ask your question, save the file, upload it to your email from your phone, and shoot it to me. And I'll be happy to answer your questions. And I think that, again, that's just one more thing that will set us apart from every other horror channel out there. And this is about distinguishing ourselves as a group and as a family. The Dark Waters channel, we want to offer something different to everyone. And in order to offer something different, we all have to participate. So I really appreciate you guys, and I hope you respect and love what I'm doing. I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy interacting with you guys, and I enjoy every single message that I get and every email that I get from you guys. So let's just keep it moving forward. I think we got a lot going on that's fantastic. And if you have a subscriber story that you want to submit, please feel free to submit it. I have a couple of stories from guys that I need to reach back out to and hold phone conversations with and go through the interview process. Thanks to my girl Sheena, I have a buttload of trucker stories coming down the pipeline that we're going to be doing soon. I'm just reading through them and checking them out, and I'm going to have to get in contact with maybe one or two of the guys to kind of fill in the blanks on the story. So we got a lot of content coming down the pipeline, guys. Enough to keep you scared late into the night. And my job is to scare you. Well, entertain you and scare the hell out of you. So I guess that's it. This is your boy Dog Waters signing out. I will see you next Sunday. And until then, I want you guys to be safe and sleep well tonight. Bye-bye.